Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 165 of Manage the Wild. I'm Nick Madsen. I was recently watching a show, and they were talking about home ranges, and it was applied to people, and they were actually using home ranges to calculate where you could find a criminal or a thief. And it got me thinking about what a home range is. And the way they explained it on the show, I didn't really understand. And as I've gotten into it and started reading and different papers and different things, again, I didn't fully understand what a home range was. Here's one definition of home range, and it comes from this book, Animal Behavior. Their theory or their definition of home range: an area that an animal occupies but does not defend, in contrast to a territory which is defended. So when I thought of a home range, I was thinking a massive area. So when I worked for the Utah Division of Wildlife, I covered from Nevada to Wyoming, roughly I-80 north. That was all the area that I would work in. Now, my actual areas was a lot smaller, but I would determine that as my home range for the Utah Division of Wildlife. So I started reading a paper that was written by a Roger Powell and Michael S. Mitchell, defining what is a home range. And their theory or their explanation of it is a little different. It is what part of that map, that home range, is being actively updated all the time. So if we were going with that example of the Utah Division of Wildlife, the main parts that were being updated for me was a small part in Hiram, Utah, a small part in Logan, a small part in Bear Lake, a small part in Grouse Creek, a small part in Weber, a small part. So there were very small parts. Even though it was the whole encompassing thing, there was very small parts that I was actually updating because I was constantly visiting those areas, whether it was for work or problems or our office or where I lived. There was certain areas that I was constantly working in versus others that I would pass through. So if you had started putting a GPS tracker on me last Thursday, you would have saw me drive 60 miles away from my house, float a river, come back, and then you would have saw me go on an overnight hike and drive 30 miles and go backpacking with my kids, and you would have thought that that was my home area because there was very little information has been provided other than my GPS location. These guys are not arguing for, but they stated in their paper that one of the best ways to understand home ranges and movement within those home ranges are trying to understand the animal itself. So if you would have saw me on Thursday, I took a job where I float a river one day a week, and you would now know, okay, this is now being updated in his home range because he's going to go there every Wednesday. I'm going to this area. And then on Tuesdays, I'm going to this area. And knowing the decisions on why I'm moving from one area to another. So here's an example of something that I saw with the Utah Division of Wildlife is every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I would go in these fields and I would haze every night. And I largely didn't do it on Mondays, and I largely didn't do it on Fridays because I'd burned through so much time Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday that I was still playing with hours, whether it was Monday or Friday. And so the elk had to update their home range on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They had to move to different areas. Now, it wasn't an area they wanted to be moved to because I was going in and pushing elk out actively. And so if you're a researcher and you don't know that I'm in there pushing these elk out, you would be like, okay, they're moving into this ravine. It must have some food. There must be something they want there. And yet more data was needed to show the reason why these elk were being pushed into this ravine or over on the other side of this ridge, because I was actively pushing them. So these guys are pushing for more data before you declare what a home range is, because you can take the entire state of Utah and say this elk, its home range is the entire state of Utah, when in reality the home ranges are a lot smaller than what we generally think of them as. So it was kind of interesting for me to gain that little bit of perspective or that little bit of understanding. Here, I'll quote directly from that paper. It says, "Understanding animals' home ranges will be a messy, irregular, complex process, and the results will be difficult to map." They go on to say, we must embrace this messiness. And there is a lot of messiness, and the challenge that you have is no home range can be the same for each individual. Just like my neighbor, we live side by side, 30 feet away, but his home range is completely different mine, and it's largely driven by the decisions that we make each day. So these guys are advocating for understanding the decisions that are made to help you understand the home range. And if you can understand the decisions, it'll help you understand the home range, which will then help you understand a lot more about what's going on. All right, you guys, have a great day. Stay wild.